Jeez. Okay. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and I'm actually in Vienna, Austria. So the show is airing on YouTube during the day. It's going to be shot over to KGRA radio for the show tonight. And so I'm pretty excited to be here. And actually, later on in the show, I have a native. He's a native, been a native for a while here. Eduardo, he's going to be joining me. He made me a wonderful graphic a couple of years ago, I think it was, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But he's going to be bringing up Austrian UFOs. Before that, I have Jeremy. I'm sorry, the full name. He's got a long name. I'm sorry. It's Corbell, and he did the wonderful film that's coming out in just a couple of days. And on Skinwalker, I've always been fascinated with that topic, and we're going to be talking about that, his filmmaking, and also he's got another film coming out in December with Bob Lazar, so we're going to be talking about that as well later on. And I got a couple questions that came in from the email. We'll be asking that, and so we may take calls at the latter part of this first hour. This first hour will be with Jeremy, and the second hour will be with myself and Eduardo. And we have the breaks as normal, about 27 minutes in or so, and then again another 27 minutes to make the full hour, and then the last of the show is an hour long. So I want to thank everyone that supports the show. Anyone can do that. That information's on podcastufo.com. And it's been a wonderful trip. Been in Russia and now over here. And it's a beautiful city. I really love it here. And so we are ready to bring on our guest. Jeremy, welcome to the show once again.
Hey, Martin. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be on.
Yes, I'm sorry I messed up your name. That's terrible.
It's okay. My friends and enemies all call me forename. It's much easier.
I'll remember that next time. So this film, Hunt for Skinwalker Ranch, I want to talk about that. I'm really excited. This is coming out. I tried to pre-order it. I think I sent you something on Facebook. Try to pre-order it, but when I was in Russia, nothing. I couldn't get. It was Vimeo, I believe it was. Nothing worked. But I'll be doing that. I'm really, really looking forward to that film, and want to talk to you about what it was like making that.
Sounds good. Yeah, the actual film, the title is Hunt for the Skinwalker, and it's titled as in just same as the book by George Knapp and Dr. Colin Kelleher, Hunt for the Skinwalker. It'll be on iTunes starting on the 11th of September. And yeah, it's an exciting film. It's 2 hours and 7 minutes plus an hour and a half of bonus material you get when you purchase it on iTunes or on Vimeo. So this is more footage that has ever been out about and on Skinwalker Ranch than in history. There's not been a single frame that has come out. So this is a very exciting time for that film.
Wow. I read the book a number of years ago and was in touch with George Knapp, trying to get him on the show. He's a very busy guy, as you know. But this is one of the places that I can't think of any other place like it. I mean, I know there are some places where a lot of activity of different kind goes on, but would you say this is like a one-of-a-kind place?
Yeah, there are places on this earth that are known for having high activity of high strangeness, from UFOs to creatures to all sorts of things like cattle mutilations. But this unique location, why Skinwalker Ranch is unique, why it is the most popular and famous, for lack of a better term, paranormal hotspot in human history, is because it does have a unique bit of history, separate from just being one of these hotspots on this earth. And that unique history is that Robert Bigelow the enigmatic billionaire who's into aerospace and space exploration, has three orbiting space satellites at this time, one attached to the International Space Station.
Mm.
He did put down his own finances and put together a team of PhD level scientists who studied this ranch, this property, for 7 years, 24 hours a day, to try to determine what it was that was occurring at this ranch. He's trying to get to the bottom of the mystery about these UFOs. And then it turns out the story is much bigger than just a UFO story. The evidence does not show that it's just aliens from other civilizations coming to visit. It's much stranger than that. They call it a precognitive sentient intelligence, that there is some sort of intelligence manipulating humanity, and it's epicentered there at the ranch, or the ranch is a living laboratory in order to study the phenomenon. So that's why Skinwalker Ranch is kind of really famous. The other reason for it now that my film will reveal is that the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is the intelligence agency of the Pentagon, they did a multi-year scientific study there. They were trying to determine if the phenomena that are reported there and experienced there, if those phenomena represent some sort of national security threat. So that also gives the experiences at the ranch and this location another bump in credibility and also in public interest, because there's not many places where the United States government has studied the paranormal, and the ranch is one of them.
That is really amazing. Now that wasn't known until just recently. Am I wrong about that?
Oh, you are absolutely right. In fact, the larger audience of the world doesn't quite know that story yet at all. My film will be breaking that news, actually. It will be providing high detail about that. So within the United States, the Pentagon, they revealed last year in December of 2017 about a secret UFO study. The New York Times released that story about $22 million being spent and spearheaded by Senator Harry Reid to study so-called flying saucers. However, there is a much bigger story the world has yet to hear. And the film, my film, will release and tell this story. There wasn't just one UFO study, ATIP, a reactionary military UFO study that's been acknowledged. At first, they said in 1969, with the close of Project Blue Book, the United States government was no longer interested in UFOs. We all suspected that not to be true, and it was proven true with that New York Times article. But the Times article got it wrong or got it incomplete. The true story is there were two UFO studies. The second one, much larger than the one that's been acknowledged, and that was ALSAP. That acronym ALSAP and what that program was about was really started off with Skinwalker Ranch. It was initiated because of Skinwalker Ranch, because Defense Intelligence agents went to the ranch and had their own experiences. So that story will be told. The world doesn't know that story yet, but the film will unleash that beast.
Isn't that something? Now, when we plot out, I'm saying, as people of this, this country, we plot out, say, acreage and ranches, and we just say, okay, this is an area of 250 acres or whatever it is, 100 acres, and so many feet or yards this way and so many yards this way, and all that. So what I'm getting at, I don't assume that it's just the ranch. How would you say the geographical area of these bizarre incidences, how widespread would you say outside of the ranch do they see things?
So that is a really important point that you're making. We create these arbitrary boundaries, these fictitious boundaries for property values and that sort of thing. I don't think the phenomenon really cares where there's a fence line or something like that. So what you have is you do have these natural boundaries. So bordering one side of Skinwalker Ranch, which is a 480 plus acre parcel, that's kind of like an island of private land surrounded by Native American land, by a sovereign nation. The Ute tribe has been up there since Abraham Lincoln, kind of put in motion that would be a reservation. So in that area, in the whole Uinta Basin, you can't throw a rock and not hit somebody that basically has seen or had a personal experience or knows somebody that has. It is prolific. It is everywhere in the Uinta Basin. It's been happening since the beginning of recorded human history in the area. However, Skinwalker Ranch has been the epicenter of study. It's been a living laboratory to try to understand what's been going on there, both by private industry, aerospace, Robert Bigelow, and then also by the Defense Intelligence Agency. But in my investigations, I focus on the ranch because it's neat and we can go there, and I was able to film there, and first time ever, footage was coming off. But additionally, I interviewed and spent a lot of time over the years working with people in the Uinta Basin who have had these extraordinary accounts, everything from cattle mutilations to craft to creatures to unexplained what appear to be portholes, dimensional portholes with craft coming through, beings coming through. I mean, it is like a paranormal Disneyland. Everything under the sun you can imagine seems to occur in the Uinta Basin and is not confined by boundary. But the ranch was a convenient and is a convenient place to use as a living laboratory to study the phenomenon.
You know, the family that moved in there, I can't remember their names when all these things started happening. Um, if it would, they were really tough to hang in there as long as they did. I'm telling you, if I had like one or two of those things happen, I'd be right out of there quick. You know, I really got to hand it to, and he stayed on. The rancher actually stayed on a while after, right? Didn't he?
Yeah, we're talking about who we call the Gormans, and that's the
Right.
name that was used in the book to preserve, their confidentiality. Their name has subsequently come out into public media, but I'm going to maintain the Gorman name. So you look at the story there of Tom Gorman and his family coming to the ranch, and they're not expecting anything. This is a paradise. They fought hard to get there to raise their Seminole cattle, to be able to provide themselves a great life there. And then all these strange events started occurring, and slowly and corrosively, it started to affect their family dynamic to the point where, after the months that they spent there, they were all huddled in the living room to sleep all together out of fear and self protection. So,
Wow.
yeah, highly disturbing. They were fighting, against whatever this phenomenon is, to try to maintain their livelihood and their lives. And some would say they lost that battle. I mean, they were pushed off their land. And in comes NIDS, with National Institute for Discovery Science, a scientific investigation group under Robert Bigelow, rapid response team. And they were like, well, we're going to figure out what this is. We're going to debunk it, disprove it. Are there hallucinogenic plants that are causing hallucinations?
Mm.
Is this military? What is this? They were looking for every prosaic explanation under the sun to try to debunk what was going on. But in fact, the opposite occurred. They all had their own experiences. The scientists themselves were witness, and did have these experiences. So, science, it was really difficult with the scientific method to figure out what's going on. But yes, Tom Gorman, he did then stay on as a ranch manager because he wanted to find out what this was. He was fighting back. And yeah, it does take courage and bravery. If I went through even a fraction of what they went through, I'd probably packed it up a long time ago.
Right. And, he lost cattle too. And, the bizarre thing, I think I spoke with John Alexander, or maybe it was just something I read in the book about, it was very obvious that one of the cows had actually dropped from something because its head was wedged down into a hole. I mean, that is, just one more bizarre story there.
Yeah, the cattle mutilations, which continue to this day. I just received recent photos from the property neighboring Skinwalker Ranch where they had some pretty dramatic mutilations very recently. And I have those images. And yeah, it
Wow.
continues to occur, and nobody really understands. Something I feature in the movie is this one particular mutilation because, look, this is the first time you will get footage from the ranch, current day, but also from the active investigations that had been going on since 1996. That's when George Knapp got involved and started to actually document with a camera these active investigations with the scientists on the ranch. You get to see that footage too. So one of the
Oh.
cattle mutilations that I focus on in the film is this particular one where it happened in the matter of like a 20-minute span, broad daylight, and this cattle, 70 pounds of meat was ripped from its body. The organs were taken out, not a single drop of blood. It looked like it was dropped or even displayed delicately on this grass. And it was right after it was tagged. Its ear was tagged. The ear was missing, by the way, and the ear and the tag were never found.
Hmm.
And this was just one of the extraordinary physical, tangible events. Because sometimes what happens at the ranch is physical, it's tangible, and other times it's non-physical, more psychological. So this was a physical event, and it is highlighted in my movie.
We had some questions came in from Kerry. He's written us some questions before, and he always writes great ones. And in particular, to what you're talking about right now, his question is: do you think the phenomena at the ranch has the ability to tap into human consciousness somehow, and as a result was able to stay one step ahead of any scientific tests carried out by the NIDS team?
Yeah, that is indeed what is reported. So to give an example of that, there's one of the experiences that occurred there that has a direct, you can really see that effect, is one of the physicists was standing out there in a field and looking through night vision, they were able to see this odd shape, like a cloud or a mist that was coming in quickly towards them, and they had some strange feeling about this. It was almost like an unnatural mist that they were seeing, and sure enough, this thing came and kind of consumed right around this one physicist. This physicist's mind was kind of taken over, is the way he could describe it now. He became paralyzed, and out of his mouth, out of his voice came a different voice, and it was warning. It was warning him, warning the other scientists, you are not welcome here.
Oh,
And so that's one of the ways in which this, I mean, this is highly bizarre. I'm not expecting anybody to believe this right off the bat. You have to really look at this and start to understand who it is that's talking, what the experiences were, what the physical evidence is, how the United States government got interested in this. You have to look at the whole story to really understand it, because it is perplexing. But there is one of the experiences where the phenomenon itself appeared to take control of the mind and body of one of the physicists, and it really messed him up. It messed him up for quite some time. So this is something that has occurred in multiple forms. So yes, they all said, everybody that studied the ranch and what's going on at the ranch, the intelligence behind the displays and performances that you see at the ranch and in the surrounding area, it is absolutely 100% in control. It has always been in control, and it's always one step ahead. And it seems to know precognitively what is going on, what is going to go on. You set up cameras in one place, it tends to perform in another place. And it is frustrating, and it is annoying, and it's hard to believe that what I'm saying is there appears to be an intelligence that is always one step ahead, and it does not like to be documented, and evades documentation to a high degree.
Now, there's also, I've heard that, there was a lot of boring nights, nothing happening at all, and it's almost, you wonder if it's a wait and see type of thing. Like if they wait long enough, maybe the scientists will go away. I mean, I don't know if there's been any speculation on that, but
Yeah.
it also it had a long period of quietness, didn't it? Like nothing going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's put it in perspective, and I got a funny story that'll do that for you. In my movie, you'll see a friend of mine and George Knapp's and a friend of Mark Allen's from Above Top Secret. His name is Robbie Williams. Robbie Williams is a pop star, internationally recognized, one of the top-selling musicians in the world. I didn't know that when I met him. He's just a really cool dude with a sincere interest in this. So he happened to join us for one of our recent trips to the ranch that I documented. So there's Robbie and me, and we're walking around, and he kind of turns to me and says, this is like searching for the paranormal needle in the haystack, because there we are. And I had to laugh at that. That was really funny. I never
Hmm.
heard that quote before. Uh, so we're there at Skinwalker Ranch, and it's like 3:30 in the morning. We're walking around, and he was absolutely right. The NIDS team was there for 7 years. They were there for 7 years, 24 hours a day. There was surveillance of the ranch. They were trying to document these experiences, and only 143 incidents were observed and recorded and documented by NIDS, by the scientific team, over those 7 years. So, just going on a weekend or something like that, that's not how it works. You have to invest time. You have to spend time in the area to really start to grasp and understand and perceive some of what is going on there. There are some people who seem to be magnets for this thing, and they have an experience the second they get into the area. But for me, that's not the case. I haven't seen anything. But yeah, there was a down period at the ranch. That's exactly why George Knapp was allowed to write the book Hunt for the Skinwalker. And that down period, they were looking for other places of interest. But I'll tell you, since the new owner purchased the ranch in 2016, the activity has increased back up again, which is something that's said is that an arrival of a stranger, somebody new, can often invoke high activity.
Wow. And there's a lot of people trying to get in there, like break on into the property or the property boundary lines. Is there any way to stop that? I mean, has that caused any problems to the new owner and Bob Bigelow as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It was causing problems ever since George Knapp wrote the book. It
Hmm.
shined a light on the ranch in the area, and people quickly figured out where it was. And yeah, it's a problem because at the time, Robert Bigelow knew that the phenomenon was interactive and that first of all, it could be dangerous, and it has proven to be dangerous, especially to animals. I mean, it was violent
Hmm.
towards animals at times. So, there's that risk factor. And then additionally, the phenomenon seems to be very reactive to individuals and to the human consciousness. And so he didn't want it to mess up his study. So there's high security all around the ranch. There's cameras everywhere. They have armed guards. It really is the
Wow.
Area 51 of the paranormal. And really, it is private land. People live there. I have a ranch, an 80-acre ranch, and I'm telling you, I'm in the middle of nowhere, and if I see people coming up there, it's not assumed they're friendly. So no, you cannot go to the ranch. Yeah, less people have been invited to the ranch than to Area 51. You can't go there, and by going there, you'll be on the wrong end of a shotgun, and it's not recommended. You're not going to see anything anyway. By dipping your toe over the property line, it's not the way to investigate or study the phenomenon. I would recommend going to the Uinta Basin. It all
Hmm.
has the same homogeneous activity. It's not just the ranch.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So anyone basically that owns that ranch has to take into account that they're going to have security, because this is probably going to just keep happening. People are going to try to get in there.
Yeah, and look, I'll say it over and over and over. You're not going to get the effects you want. Please don't do it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't like it if it was your land and you were living there. I feel terrible for the people that actually live there. There are, times when it gets out of control and they have high security and you will go to jail. And that's just how it is. So not recommended. Don't do it. But it is what it is.
How long were you actually on the property itself doing filming?
Well, I went on multiple occasions over the years, lucky that I was able to do that. So what you'll see in the film, the footage spans, because of George Knapp's footage, I mean, it spans, 25 plus years.
Hmm.
That's, that's what's really cool. But yeah, about 25 years. So that is what you'll be seeing in the film. However, I do focus a bunch on a recent trip we took out there where we really get into the specifics of the area on the ranch. You get to see some of the guests and what's going on, the conversations, and the bonus material really does a cool walkthrough of the ranch. So again, up till date, you've had zero footage from inside Skinwalker Ranch. When this movie releases, you are going to have 3.5 hours of footage, which is really cool.
Wow. Wow. Another question along those lines that Carrie asked: when you were filming at the ranch, did you ever get the feeling that you were being observed by the phenomenon?
I think I was being observed by my friends who were putting me out there like George Knapp as bait for the phenomenon. I think they were watching me to see if I was scared. But look, I am not a paranoid person. I feel very confident. I'm comfortable in the dark. I'm not really a fearful person by any means. I definitely was over curious. I was very curious of was I going to see or experience anything. I also was extremely skeptical because I know when you're going to a place that is known for that kind of activity, it's like a Rorschach test. You're going to see what you want to see if you're not wound so tight. So my goal was to go and just be open-minded and go see what's going on. And no, I never had a scary moment. I never saw anything frightening. There's nothing I can't really explain. There were some lights that I saw illuminating the second homestead, which has no artificial power. I don't know what those lights were. That's the kind of thing where it wasn't a close encounter. I can't explain that, but again, it's semi intriguing. I would really love to have seen something more direct or, you know, a closer encounter, I guess. So no, I haven't seen anything, haven't had any negative experiences. I actually felt great in the area and at the ranch. Everybody keeps reminding me there's still time. So I have that to look forward to. But
Yeah.
yeah.
We have just a couple of minutes before the first break. And has any human ever, I just don't remember reading it in the book, but has any person ever actually been injured or hurt there because of, or something was triggered that caused an injury?
No, that's something, a rumor that is persistent and persistent. Nothing can be verified that any individual was, physically harmed. It seemed to make a distinction between animals and humans. I mean, it, obliterated 3 dogs and turned them into
Right.
piles of goo.
Mm.
It mutilated numerous cattle. I think 14 vanished. I mean, all sorts of things like that. So, the injuries and the physical violence was directed at animals compared to humans. However, humans, there was a psychological aspect. There were the blue meanies, which are these nickname for these blue orbs that seem to induce an external, irrational fear within the human brain,
Wow.
just something really traumatizing. So I would say psychologically, and with the DIA people that went, there were, the experience of hitchhikers, something following them home. So psychologically, I'd say there has been, damage. Physically, highly debatable. No, I wouldn't pick one particular event and say, there we have it, proof of harming humans.
Wow.
It's not my understanding at all.
All right, so we are going to go into break. I'm on with Jeremy Corbell, and we are going to have just a minute and a half break here, and we'll be right back. This is on KGRA Radio, and this is Martin Willis with Podcast UFO. Hang in, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back. That went a little quicker than I thought. We're back with Jeremy Corbell. This is Martin Willis, and we're on KGRA Radio. And Jeremy Corbell is talking about Hunt for the Skinwalker. And this is really fascinating to me. A little bit later on, we're going to be taking some questions on chat. Also, we can probably take a couple of phone calls. And we're going to be also mixing in his upcoming film about Bob Lazar. Jeremy, does that film have a working title at this point?
Yes, it'll be Bob Lazar, Area 51, and Flying Saucers.
Wow. Okay. You think that's the permanent title, or is that just for now?
I've been thinking a lot about it. I have some, kind of more artistic titles that I'd love to put out there, but I think that's the crux of the story. I think the story is Bob Lazar, Area 51, and Flying Saucers. The reason you know about Area 51 is because of Bob Lazar.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that is. Yeah, we'll talk more about that later. But for now, I wanted to continue, and also in a little bit, I'm going to take some calls because people are going to want to have some. I'm sure going to have some questions about this film in particular. So another really good question I wanted to ask you that Carrie sent in, and I love this one. Robert Bigelow has stated on TV about his belief in ETs. Do you think this is a direct result from the study by NIDS team at the ranch, or is this? Would you think he felt that way ahead of time?
Well, I don't think he's talking about a feeling. I think he's talking about knowledge. I think that he is saying that he knows it
That's
is
right. He did
true.
say that. Yes.
Right. And I think that's important. I mean, look, you've got a guy that's invested more of his private finances into the search and study of UFOs. He has worked with the United States government, the Defense Intelligence Agency, when they took over the study at the ranch and partnered with Robert Bigelow through BASS. That was the acronym for the name of the group that got the contract from the $22 million that Harry Reid put into motion, where they actually studied under OSAP the whole phenomenon at the ranch. So I think Robert Bigelow, when he went on and 60 Minutes and he talked about his knowledge that extraterrestrials are real, that they've been here a long time, and that they're here now. I think we should listen to that. And I think he's talking about it from his experience and his studies at the ranch. But I also think that he has other information
Hmm.
and that he's basing that opinion on other knowledge.
Yes. Yeah. I understand that totally and agree with you on that. And we can talk a little bit more about that later. But getting back to this, what do you think is the best evidence that something happened on the ranch?
Well, I think there's tons of evidence. I personally look at multiple eyewitness corroborating testimony from people that don't know each other from different locations. I do consider that to be highly valuable. People are very up in arms about, is eyewitness testimony actually evidence? And look, we use eyewitness testimony to put people away for life in prison. And sure, once in a while they get it wrong, and that is a tragedy. But I think all in all, even with the problems associated with eyewitness testimony, there is a huge value, and it is indeed evidence. And so that's one form of evidence. There also is physical evidence, and I've mentioned some of it already as we're talking, but you have the eyewitness testimony, you have photographic evidence. Now, evidence of what? I don't know. There's a little bit in my film where you can see this video footage of what appears to be like an apparition of the Twin Towers that appears over the ranch. I put that in the film. What is that evidence of? I don't know, but it happened, so I put it in the film. Additionally from there, as I talked about the cattle mutilations and that sort of thing, that is hardcore physical evidence. There was an ice circle event you can read about in George Knapp's book. I don't focus it on the film, but another physical evidence. And then, it's really mind-twisting, strange physical evidence. Like, you tell me what this means. For example, precognitive, we talked about that. The ranchers are there. They're talking about these 4 prized 1,000-pound bulls that they have, and they're saying, oh man, we hope whatever this is doesn't mess with those. We'd be really screwed if it did. Next thing they know, they're going out. They look into the pen. Bulls are gone. No entrance point,
That's
no
right.
exit point.
Yeah.
Everything's locked up. Bulls are gone. So there's Tom Gorman, and he's looking into a trailer that is, again, locked up and closed up. I mean, there's cobwebs on the inside and on the outside. It is locked. And he peers in, and there are these 4 bulls jammed into this tiny little space that you have to walk up into. It's impossible to get bulls in there. And impossible because there was no entrance point. And there they are, catatonic. And he yells to his wife. At that moment, the bulls go crazy. They realize that they're jammed in this tiny little space. They start smashing it, obliterate this trailer, right? They bust out the side and get out. NIDS team investigated this, and again, like, there's cobwebs on the inside. The doors were not open. How did this happen? Now, here's the physical evidence. So strange, but the whole pen was highly magnetized for hours after.
Really?
Now, again,
Wow.
yeah. So is that part of the mechanism that was used to kind of transport these bulls into this? I have no idea. We got to guess because that is evidence, physical evidence. but evidence of what?
Yeah.
And that we still don't know.
Now, you said, did I hear you say earlier that some cattle have actually vanished? Did I
Yeah,
hear?
the majority of cattle that, there's more vanishing cattle issues than mutilation issues.
Now, it just makes you wonder, this is just speculating, of course, but things have been seen to come through these portals. You wonder if maybe they slid a few back through. I know that's kind of a wacky thing to say, but when they vanished, can they actually, is this a fenced in, 400 some odd acre ranch, or can
Well,
they just wander off?
certainly, no, certainly where the cattle is. Yeah, yeah, it certainly is. I mean, they don't want to
Hmm.
lose their cattle,
Right.
and there's at time after time. Of course, there's some break in the fence. They have to mend the fence. I mean, it's not totally crazy to lose cattle once in a while, but to lose this much,
Hmm.
and additionally, to not ever find the cattle. I mean, it's not like they just completely wander off and they can evaporate into thin air. I mean, usually a neighbor will find it and let you know, and they bring the cattle back. And again, the cattle disappearances were often associated with other strange phenomenon, like these blue orbs that everybody sees in the area that induce fear, like these bright lights that come from the sky, like, all sorts of these strange things. So your theory that you're proposing here, that maybe they're entering the porthole, I mean, look, we have to come up with theories. We have to come up with ideas. We have to make sure we call them theories because none of us
Hmm.
really know.
Hmm.
But yeah, this is a question that the Defense Intelligence Agency tried to tackle, is if we're seeing these openings and craft are coming through, can things go through the other way? And it's impossible to test, but it is a question.
How many would you say? What is the percentage of something that could be called UFO activity? It's rather small there, isn't it, compared to other happenings?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that it's all blended together. There's a lot of UFO activity. When I was talking with some of the tribal police who regularly go on patrol, there are known locations where mile wide looking craft seem to appear hanging over a valley on a regular basis. So they're out and about and kind of hitting the street. That's their job as tribal police, and they're seeing stuff all the time that seems to be UFO activity. But a lot of what occurs in the Uinta Basin is not just lights in the sky or craft that appear to be flying. It also is close encounters. And this I really want to stress. This is the predominant experience. People are having close encounters with entities, maybe associated with UFOs, but with beings. And so this is what's so strange. In my film, you'll see me interview an individual named Corey Sarawap, and he talks about having a close encounter with a UFO where it is hovering to a height where if he really could jump, he could have smacked it with his hand. He steps out from his place of employment. It's way early in the morning. It's basically pitch black out, being about 4 in the morning, and the whole place lights up red, but like daylight. It illuminated with a type of light that what everybody seems to describe. It's more than bright. It illuminates the land like daylight. And again, how it seems to influence the minds of people. He heard in his head, "You shouldn't be out here. You shouldn't be seeing
Hmm.
this. You better go back inside, or you're going to miss your family." So when he heard that, he was thinking, I don't want to get abducted. He goes back inside. He complies. Now, this is something that multiple people saw this craft. Multiple people saw these lights. Multiple people from different areas, miles and miles away, saw the red and blue flashing that he was saying, was really bright where he was. So you get all these corroborating witnesses who see only a portion of the totality of what happened on that day. But we came and got to the closest witness to the craft, and that was Corey, you'll see in my film.
That's really amazing. Has now so far it sounds like, well, the first encounter you were talking about, or whatever type of encounter it was, where the guy's voice was taken over. Um, I wouldn't consider that telepathic, but were other people talking about some type of telepathic issues with any other of the beings or entities or anything that was seen there?
Yeah, this is a quite common experience where there is some sort of projection into the mind of people that are there, almost like I'd say a possession. And that's really scary and interesting and fascinating. And there is both a sociological and psychological aspect to it. But I also think there's a physical aspect to it. I mean, these people are reporting the same thing without knowing each other, and it's pretty wild. Yeah, the this intelligence seems to have the ability to invoke emotion and to also give you messages in your mind.
Wow, this is really something. Question on the in the chat room here: how do we reconcile the physical phenomena they measure, like destroyed cameras, while no actual physical evidence is produced? I'm a scientist and wonder if there are any legit theories. That was by Jay Allen.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it just depends what you consider evidence. I mean, is the physical dismembering of a camera, is that evidence of sorts? Is
Mm-hmm.
eviscerated cattle or calf, that was done in a certain amount of time frame, and they went to four different pathologists, and they were able to tell the two different types of tools used on this calf. I mean, is that physical evidence? Is some of the video footage that shows anomalous stuff, like I was talking about the apparition of the Twin Towers, is that physical evidence? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. If you're the scientist, Jay Allen, have your comment. You tell me what's physical evidence. I mean, I really don't know. All of this is evidence, but of what?
Yeah, of what? And I wonder, a lot of people have said this before me. This is nothing to do with my thoughts or anything like that, just borrowed lines. And that is, perhaps the UFOs, for instance, is something that we can't even imagine. And, perhaps this kind of ties in with that. Whatever is happening may be something that we have no idea of how to describe. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe we do need a different language in order to describe this. Maybe we need to look at it, through a lens other than just purely scientific. I really don't know. I'm just a documentary filmmaker. I like to investigate these stories. There's a great quote that George Knapp often likes to say, which is, it's our job to investigate the unexplained, not explain the uninvestigated. And that
Mm.
is true. We need to have an open mind and look at this. The moment we think we understand it, or we dismiss evidence, or we dismiss testimony, or dismiss what everybody's saying because we're so sure that we understand consensus reality and we're right, oh man, you're missing it. You're missing it big time. There is something that is occurring in the Uinta Basin. It is appears as UFOs, and it also appears as seemingly creatures. Really, I just have to say it, seemingly creatures. And then there is a quote unquote paranormal aspect to this, some kind of poltergeist like activity, and we're looking at what we call physical evidence. Like, again, another example: tree branches cut out in a perfect square out of the tops of trees because some craft came careening through and kind of broke them out. I mean, it's wild. I don't know what to make of it. We need help looking at this kind of thing and using the camera as kind of a way to tell this story and get more bright minds on it. Now that's what I'm trying to do.
I'm going to say this. This is a call-in number I'm going to give on this. But anyone listening to this, as a pre-recorded show, please don't call the number. It's only for call-in number during the show, and that's 603-967-4030. The reason I'm giving that out now is because we're going to switch gears here in just a minute and talk about the Bob Lazar film. Someone, Jay Allen, has another question here. With all the attention, and clearly there is significant amount of measuring devices installed long term, why is this still a mystery? Where's the solid data? But I understand what you just said a few minutes ago. Solid data of what, right? Isn't that what you're trying to get
Yeah,
across?
I'm
Yeah.
not trying to convince you of anything. I am just as baffled as anybody else. Look, it's very natural. Guy that's writing in under Jay Allen, it's very natural to want evidence, and What I'm saying is there is evidence. I just of what? That's the big question. None of us know the answer to that. There was a camera pointed at the other cameras. That very cool. Okay, those cameras get dismembered, but all that was registered on the film was this tiny, tiny little speck of blue ball of light that was kind of moving around the camera that they don't know is associated with that very, very powerful ripping off of all of the duct tape and wires that occurred on that pole. So yeah, look, here's the difficult part. Maybe what is being experienced here is an intelligence, and that intelligence knows and it is hip to what a camera is.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it wants to confuse and distort and mess with your perception, but doesn't want to be captured. So maybe what we're dealing with is a sentient intelligence that is somehow toying with people, and it is evading being captured significantly in any form on camera. And tough luck, man. I mean, that's just what seems to be happening, and we got to deal with it.
Okay, so we're going to move on to Bob Lazar after this one last question, and that is, what do you think, or what do you hope that your film is going to change, if anything, or do you think it's the awareness that you're going to change?
Well, very tangibly, my film provides the viewer with not only the whole narrative visually of what has been happening up to date, including the announcements by the Pentagon and the New York Times about active ongoing programs to study UFOs, but it's actually going to tell you the truth. It's going to tell you what the New York Times didn't tell you. So that is a contribution to the film that I know the film actually has deeply, is that it's going to break some news, and people need to pay attention to that. That didn't come in accidentally, it didn't come in lightly. I put that in the film because I want to have massive impact by shedding light on what the truth is about the UFO programs within the United States. So that is going to be within the film, and particularly a lot of the bonus material. But additionally, what the film is giving people is it's giving them 3.5 hours of footage from Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, wow, that's never been there before. So yeah, of course it's going to raise awareness. Of course it's going to raise the consciousness about this event. It's going into mass distribution to everybody's homes. I mean, that's really cool. So my hope is that, yes, my films do have impact. And that impact, and I like to say it, and it's not an obscure idea, weaponize your curiosity. I want you to stop being a passive observer and consumer of this information, just consuming stuff, but I want you to become an active participant, to start in a way contributing to the dialogue. So if my film can motivate people to get off their asses and do that, well then, hey, I've won.
Right, right. But we certainly don't want anyone visiting the ranch.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, yeah, contribute to the story and to the
Yeah.
understanding of the phenomenon. Again, the ranch is off limits. Be respectful. You'd be on the wrong end of a shotgun.
Yeah, yeah. And all right, so let's move on to, we didn't have any call-ins, which is just fine. I don't even know if I could actually make that work here in Austria, but I was going to give it a try. So we have a kind of a short time left, because I know you've got an appointment coming up, and the rest of the show is going to be with Eduardo Lobo and myself. So on to the Bob Lazar film coming out. Do you have an actual hard date that's coming out in December?
Yeah, absolutely. That will be released at midnight on December 3rd worldwide. And I guess I'll announce for the first time here, the details are about to be put out, but there will be in Los Angeles, in downtown LA, a world premiere for the Bob Lazar film on December 3rd, hosted by me and Bob Lazar. So that's going to be very exciting. And it will be, as long as there's tickets, it will be open to the public to grab those tickets up. And I'll be announcing that very soon to see the world premiere of the film on December 3rd. Very exciting.
Wow, that is. Well, one of the, I have to tell you, I've been on the fence about Bob Lazar for a number of years. The only reason at all that I've ever, paid attention, I have to tell you, is because of George Knapp. I have a lot of respect for George Knapp, and I think if George Knapp believes Bob Lazar, you got to take a second look. But I just want to address just a couple of things, and wondered what you thought about that. You've been working with Bob himself, but one of the things is, when someone, I'm just going to throw this at you, when someone questioned him, what was the name of the square outside of MIT? He wasn't able to answer that. What do you say to people that are skeptical about Bob Lazar, about situations like that and his schooling?
Yeah, Bob Lazar wants you to be skeptical. He's not asking anybody to believe his story. In fact, if you don't believe his story, he's publicly asked you to pass that on because it's done nothing good for him. The UFO topic has only harmed his life. It's done nothing good for him. He is simply telling you his story. It's up to you whether or not you want to believe it. He definitely wants you to look at the evidence. He wants you to ask the hard questions, and he wants you to try to understand his story as he's saying it, not as other people are saying it. So I've never heard that he wasn't able to answer that specific question. Again, I would ask for evidence that he wasn't able to answer that specific question. But yeah, of course, the things we can throw at him, his education has always been problematic. There's no way for us to prove it. We have not been able to prove it. George hasn't been able to prove it for 30 years. He said that in his first article about Bob, but we can go the other way about it, and we could say, what are the things that Bob knew that he shouldn't know? And that's just equally as fascinating. How did he know that on Wednesday nights there would be a test flight of a flying saucer, and he took people out there 3 different times? Not only did they see it, but on one of the occasions they filmed it. How did he know that there was a facility called S4? Okay, S4 was never mentioned in any media in any form, and that facility, 3 of them or multiple, were actually confirmed by George Knapp in 1989 by the base itself. How did he know about the OFI who did the investigations, and a guy named Thingpin who actually did investigations? How did he know that if it didn't happen? How did he have knowledge of Area 51, what it's like to land there? George put him through the paces with a bunch of people. So how did he know that? How did he pass 4 polygraph tests if he's such a liar? How did he pass those too? And, it just goes on and on and on. We can look at it by, well, we can't prove this about Bob. Okay, well, don't miss, don't miss the point here. The point here is there is a whole nother side to that story of stuff that we can't explain that he knew. And that's what makes Bob Lazar's story so interesting, is because it's polarizing, because we don't want to believe it because it's too wild. Yet at the same time, there are things that compel us to have to look at it with a little bit more ration than an emotional response to just saying, I believe or disbelieve it. And look, Bob wants you to do that, and my film will be a great opportunity to look at his story once again through the lens of 30 years. Because as we know, the only reason we've heard about Bob Lazar is because of George Knapp and the reporting that he's done and trying to pull Bob out to say everything that he said over these years. This is a new day. This is a new day, 30 years later, and we're going to get more information than we've ever had on Bob Lazar simply by the release of the film.
Wow. Someone just tried to call in. I do have to say, unfortunately, I was afraid this may happen, and I'm not able to join you in with the call. So anyone listening on YouTube, I'm sorry, you're just not going to be able to call in. Please post your questions on the chat, and I will try to get to them when I can. Now, so what would you say your feeling is? Do you believe that he is, you worked with him, you've looked at him in the eye? Again, this person's trying to call in. Do you feel like it's total legit? Do you feel like he is telling the truth on the things he's telling?
Yes, this is really gonna frustrate everybody, and this is the question that everybody asks, and I'm sure I'm gonna get this question. Everybody wants to know, okay, so Jeremy, you're the investigative reporter, you've spent more time with him than anybody, you've lived at his house, you filmed with him, he's lived at your house, filmed with him, do you believe him? And I'll answer it this way. Yes, I do. I do believe Bob, but it's not because of the information that's been out in the public that I believe Bob. I believe Bob because the evidence that he's telling the truth certainly outweighs the evidence that he's lying, especially about working at a secret base called S4. With his education, I have no idea. There's no way for me to even make a determination of if I believe him on that or not. I literally can't prove it one way or the other. I mean, I have direct testimony from people who did go to Caltech with him, which is a debated school he went to. So apparently he did go to Caltech. Okay, great. Did he go to MIT? No idea. But did he work at a super secret classified base near Area 51? Undoubtedly. And now here's the deal. I interview people all the time. I talk with people all the time about this. Some of those people are still employed by the United States government, or still they are keeping their oaths serious. So a lot of the testimony and stuff that I base my answers on, I can't show you in a film. So I no longer have the luxury of disbelief about Bob Lazar and flying saucers. However, my film is not trying to convince you of that. My film is just showing you a little bit through my lens of what it is that I observed, and I hope you enjoy it.
Well, you know, I wish we had more time because there's a lot more questions I'd love to ask you about this. So we'll look for that on the December 3rd opening date, and also on iTunes coming out in just a couple of days is Hunt for Skinwalker. Jeremy, it's
Yeah,
always a great pleasure talking to you. I always enjoy it very, very much. And
thanks so much for having me on. I really do appreciate it. And your fans and your audience, I just want you to know that you need to make your own determination about these things. Don't be lazy. But one way to do that is to look at the films that I have curated for you. So go to extraordinarybeliefs.com, go check out all my film work. But most certainly on September 11th, Hunt for the Skinwalker will drop. And with the bonus materials on iTunes, it's again like 3.5 hours of footage. It's going to be so cool. So watch it, and hopefully it will weaponize your curiosity. And that's the point.
excellent. Thanks so much, Jeremy. You take care.
You too. Thanks a lot.
All right. So this is Martin Willis with Podcast UFO on KGRA Radio. And hang in there. We'll be right back. This is Martin Willis with Podcast UFO. Thanks for hanging in. And now it's myself. We're here in Austria. I'm with myself and Eduardo Lobo. Eduardo, welcome to the show.
Martin, so nice to be able to be in the show with you. And I'm a big fan of you and your show. Every week I try to listen, and it's amazing to have the opportunity to meet you. And I'm really happy. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're very welcome. It's a real pleasure. And you made this great graphic. I'll post it up in the show notes if I get a chance. You're a graphic designer, and this thing you did made a comic book, basically, cover for my show. Again, that'll be in the show notes coming up. So here in Austria, and it's been a great pleasure. Actually, you've actually helped me get around here, and you've been very helpful. So if you wouldn't mind giving the listener a little bit of your background, and I think it's kind of funny how you started listening to my show too, but go ahead if you would.
Cool. Thanks, Martin. Well, I'm from Brazil originally. I used to live for 5 years in London, and then since 2007 I live here in Austria. My wife is from Austria, so that's the reason I live here in Austria. And then it's funny because always love UFO and all these things, but sometimes it's just difficult to believe in people. And then when I started to listen to your program, and I was like, oh, that's nice. You always have like nice source, like where you get the information, and you and Alejandro Rojas and Ryan Sprague. But it was funny because my wife was pregnant, and then she didn't want to say, let's go to bed. I don't want to watch TV. So when I was like in bed with her, I said, listen to something. So I started to listen to your podcast. So while my wife was pregnant, I was listening to your podcast like every week. So that's how I started to listen to your podcast, and I love it. I couldn't stop. And every friend that likes UFO, I try to say, look, try and check out the podcast. UFO is great, and Martin is a great. The way that you talk is amazing, really cool.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. Unfortunately, we have to share a microphone because traveling overseas, I couldn't bring any equipment, and so we have to share this microphone. And at this point, I will tell you that I will be able to take calls because there won't be anyone else on Skype. So we'll be able to tell that number that I do give out is a Skype number, is my own Skype number. So I will be able to take calls on that if people would like to call in a little bit later. Before we get into talking about Austrian UFOs and all that, I would like to first give a recount of a story that I've told a number of times. I've told it secondhand, and that is in Russia, a sighting. I was in Russia for the last 10 days or so. So this sighting I have mentioned a number of times, how this gentleman said he went through a mountain pass, basically a cigar-shaped craft went through. Well, I actually rode in the car with him to the spot where it actually happened. I was, first of all, very surprised. It wasn't a very steep mountain pass, but it was a mountain pass. But there was a lot of traffic, and that was puzzling for the whole conversation of what had happened. So the details are different than the secondhand story that I have told a couple of times on this. Now, what had happened basically was he was going through this mountain pass, and it's outside of a town called Novorossiysk. It's not too terribly far from the Black Sea, but this is a mountainous range, and I believe it would be south of that city by maybe, say, 15 kilometers or something like that. So what he observed was that all of a sudden everyone's car engine died, and they all kind of went off to the side of the road. And this cigar shape, he said it was a dark, almost like a gunmetal, dark gray gunmetal, like cigar shaped craft, floated overhead, slowly overhead. And then he basically said he woke up. And what I had thought, I think I had said before, I thought people had gotten out of their cars, but no one got out of their cars. They were just all over to the side of the road. And what he thinks, he said all electronic equipment, not just the car stopped, but his watch and everything electronic stopped. And then he was waking up, groggy. And he saw other people waking up, and people started their cars, and the cars started right up. Nobody got out of their car and talked to anybody. Everyone just drove off, which I think is really, really bizarre. And so I tried to get out of him if he thought he had missing time, because it's such a weird event in general. And he didn't really know. He didn't really say that he thought that there was an hour missing or anything like that. But anyway, so I through a translator, basically, I got the story straight, sitting right next to this gentleman. And I think it's quite a fascinating story, and I also think it's kind of funny that all the witnesses drove off, but that can happen. And so a little bit about you now, Eduardo. We were talking ahead of time that you were going to talk about some Austrian UFO events, and if you wouldn't mind, I would love to hear some. But that was before I knew you were from Brazil. Originally, you landed here in Vienna. How many years?
10 years already. I live here for 10 years already. Nearly 11 years. I live here already. Yeah.
And so, how long had you had an interest in UFOs in general?
It's funny, Martin, because when I started, I was a really small kid. My brother, he's 2 years older than me, and he loves UFO and everything. He said he was talking the whole week about movie he saw on TV. He said, I need to see this movie. It was the Close Encounters. We were kids, you know? I'm 41 years old. So, and then he said you have to see, but I haven't seen the movie. Few months later, they showed the movie again. And I went to the living room exactly the time that Richard Dreyfuss was in the middle of the road, and the lights are just going very, very close. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I need to know more about this. Because I always the paranormal phenomenon, all these things, ghost stories. I've been always fascinated with these things, especially because my grandmother always used to say these things. But the UFO started when I was maybe I was 11 or 10 years old, I would say, yeah. And then I started to asking people, in Brazil, hear a lot of stories, you know if it's true or not. You hear a lot of stories from the family, friends, and that's how I start been interested in UFO and in all the aliens and the phenomena itself. Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that have happened in Brazil.
In Brazil, always. Yeah.
And there's actually one really kind of scary story that happened there. I can't remember the exact details of it, but anyway, we're here in Austria, so I would like to talk. If you would, fill us in on a couple of UFO stories in Austria, if you wouldn't mind.
Cool. That's really fine. Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Make sure you hold it close.
Okay, it's cool. And Martin was just like, I'm not a researcher or something, just because I like UFO a lot and stuff. And I was just, when you said, Eddie, maybe we can meet and you can have an interview, so I think was really cool. Yeah, I was just researching, and there's a place here, Martin. People, Austria is a small country. It's amazing, but it's really small. So I was telling you before, the US is 117 times bigger than Austria. So we don't have so many cases as you have in US or even in France and in Germany or UK. So there's a place, there's an institution called the UFO Österreich, which is Deutsche Sprache Gesellschaft für UFO-Forschung Österreich, which means it's a German society, speaking society for UFO research in Austria. And they say there's around 10 to 12 cases of UFOs report per month. So they have in the end of the year about like 100 cases. And one of the members of the GUF is a researcher called Mario Rank. He said like most of 75% of the cases is easy to explain. Maybe it's like an insect or something in the lens or lens flares, so it's really easy to explain. But he said like 2 to 5% of the cases they can't explain. So that's it's really cool. And then one thing that is really interesting, Martin, that I was just checking, was the Austrian airspace radar control. I was researching a little bit about the radar control, how they observe the airspace in Austria, and they say like they have 30 to 50 times per year they need to send a jet or like airplane, I don't know how to say, so airplane to check to have an idea to see if it's a UFO or what is that, because they can't find in the radar. So I think it was interesting to know about like 30 or 50 times per year they need to send a jet and check if it's like what is the point in the radar. But they don't say what they found, they just like kept quiet. So that's how I could find out. Austrians are very reserved in general, which is not a bad thing. It's just like, but so they don't talk too much about UFO, and the government is just the reflex of it as well.
So in general, would you say, have you found Austria in general very reluctant to talk about UFOs? And are there any cases where the government, had to get involved besides, chasing them in jets or anything? That have you ever heard of any stories about any of that?
It's funny, Martin, that is like I couldn't find anything. No, Austria doesn't have any Rendlesham Forest or Roswell case. Like there's most of the times like sites that they have with orbs or with like there's one, this Rudy Nagora in 1971 that is a case with the photograph that is really famous. But apart from this, is nothing like they don't talk too much, and I don't think the government is too involved with these things. We don't see too much in the newspapers as well about UFO. Every now and again in the tabloids you see something about UFO, but it's really difficult to see something in a proper newspaper talking about a UFO case. So they don't talk too much at all.
When we were having dinner earlier, you mentioned that some of your coworkers kind of fluff it off, that it's something they're just not interested in. So in general, would you say, and this isn't that far from Germany, would you say do you know anything about Germany as well? Is it similar as far as the thought of UFOs?
Well, I don't know. I've worked with some people from Germany, and I think it's a little bit open, like opener as here. Because here they don't talk. I believe in Germany they would talk a little bit more about the subject, and I think you could find more things out. Like I don't think here they don't talk too much. I don't know. Sometimes people, Martin, they are really scared to be ridicule, or people make fun or something like this, so they don't want to talk too much about the subject. I've got a good friend of mine, Martin. I'm not going to tell his name because he asked me, please don't tell my name. But he's a really good friend of mine. He even supports financially the TTS, the To the Stars Academy. He's crazy about UFO. He loves it. And he said one day, he was in the toilet in the middle of the night, and he saw on the window and he saw this light, and he thought it was a satellite or a light or a planet that was like with the intense light, but suddenly started like making like a zigzag, and suddenly went very fast and vanished in on the space. So people like to say, some people that are interested, they like to talk about it, but not everyone.
Yeah, yeah. So I know when you and I talked, I don't know, maybe a month ago, you were going to look into UFOs here in Austria, and you mentioned to me there's some sighting that is an early sighting as far as documented. Can you talk a little bit about that one? I may not be familiar with that one unless it's that one that they made. It's not the one they made the print out of, is it? The woodblock print?
Wow, I'm not
No.
sure. Martin.
Okay. Well, go ahead and explain that one if you would.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's really interesting. It's something that is called. They said it's the first UFO documented case. It was back in the 14th century. I need to read because I can't remember everything. Yeah, but the thing happened in a place called Feldkirche, in the western Austrian state of Vorarlberg. It's already close to Switzerland and Liechtenstein. And the story is like this: like was printed in a I think it's a newspaper or something like this in 1685. But the case is for 1344. So it goes like this. In the following year of 1344, at Feldkirch before Easter, on Tuesday in the whole week, between 7 and 8 o'clock in the evening, a terrible log with fire in it, in the shape of a tub, or as large as a medicine, which corn is measured, drop out of the clouds in the so-called market lane. People that were passing by on the street at the moment saw the approaching log with great dismay, and consequently associate the event with a great evil in the future. But the block, having burned for quite a long time, when it was approaching people, just turned it back and vanished in the sky. So I don't know if this is the one that you saw, but there's one that I found out here. I think it's interesting to see. At that time they had things like this as well, isn't it? But sometimes I think events like this were related with religion things. So like they have in Portugal or something like this. So can be something a UFO or sight, but people at the time they think that there's something about religions or image of a saint or something like this. Yeah, but that's interesting.
Yes. So that that is not the particular one I'm thinking of. Actually, the one I'm thinking of, I thought it was Austria, but it may be Germany or someplace like that. And I'm sure a listener will know where they actually had. It was like they called it a battle in the sky.
All right, okay.
That, and there's a woodblock print of it. It's still a very fascinating, but it's around the same time era. I'm not sure exactly what century it was. Let's see now. As far as if someone would like to call in and ask us questions, we would love that, because we can take that now. And that phone number, again, please only use it during the show, is 967. I'm sorry, start out with the area code 603-967-4030 if you'd like to call in. Also, if you'd like to use your Skype, you can call in at Skype, and that's my name. Sort of my name. Marty Willis is the Skype username, and don't call me Marty. But anyway, Marty Willis is that. The Belgium wave, that was in Belgium, which is outside of France. Oh, they wanted to know if that spilled over into Germany and Austria. Did you ever know? Again, as we talked earlier in the show about the Skinwalker Ranch, we set our boundaries where the boundary lines are, and they're not going to know one country from another. I don't know. Have you ever heard of any?
I know the case, in Belgian case, I think it's the triangle.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember. So, but no, Martin, I live here since 2007, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe at the time was something, because I even asked the relatives from my wife if they know something about UFO, if they seen something about. But this particular case, I know that they're about, but don't know if they at the time they show something here. I suppose maybe in Germany, but I don't know here, Martin.
Someone online was in the chat room said that they. I'm sorry, I misread that. Sorry about that. So, as far as the other UFO sightings that you're aware of, what would you consider the most famous situation here in Austria?
Martin, I think after I've just read something, researched something, I think the most famous case in Austria that I could find out is the one from Rudy Nagora. The case was in 1971, Martin. It was a guy, he's a musician from Munich, and he was in a holiday here in Austria, I think in Styria. No, in the state of Styria, close to Graz. He was with his wife. He was just passing by, and he wants to stop, just go for a walk with his wife. So he stopped the car. When he left the car, he heard something above him, and then as he looked at the star, up at the sky, he saw this metal object just crossing the sky. So he saw that. He went to the car, told his wife what he saw, took his camera. At the time, he took like 12 pictures because I think the roll was like 12 exposures and stuff. Yeah. So he took 12 pictures, and then after that, when finished the 12 exposures, he saw the object was coming even close to him, and then after vanishing in the sky. And the nice thing about this, because they took these pictures to Germany and also to US, I think, and till now the pictures hasn't been debunked, and looks really nice pictures. I don't know if also if this is true or not, but beautiful, like X-Files style pictures. Look, I think this is one of the most famous, because if you go to the internet and if you put Austrian UFO and if you talk to people, they always refer to this case. So I think it's one of the most famous. There's even an abduction case in Salzburg that I found out as well. But this one, the specific one from Rudy Nagora, because you can even find on YouTube some interviews from Rudy Nagora. He tells about the case. Until now, he's from Germany. He talks about the case. And then it's nice because the pictures being analyzed in 1971, so didn't have this Photoshop stuff. I mean, people can do whatever. But I think that was one of the most famous from Rudy Nagora, I would say. So yeah, it's beautiful pictures. I think so 12 pictures, and they look really, really nice.
So I did a quick search and saw this that someone posted over on YouTube, I guess it is. And that was back in March of 2018. Did you happen to check into this one? I haven't even. Is that a fake or a hoax or something?
That's so funny, Martin, because I'm a graphic designer and I work with Photoshop and After Effects nearly every single day, And then I don't know why people do sometimes. Like I would be ashamed to do something like this. I mean, if it was for fun, I'd be like, like you see that it's like it's like a Star Wars style, like. I would love to be true, but people do these things, I don't know why. I mean, there's another case that happened, I think, 2017, Martin. It was like the New Year's Eve celebration, and was this girl took a picture, was viral, was like of a thunder striking a UFO, and went viral, like 100. I mean, for Austria, 100,000 views is a lot,
Yeah.
And then they ask the weather forecast if they had any thunder at the time in the specific day. Said no, we didn't have any. And then they found out afterward that the girl who posted all these things on Facebook or YouTube, she's a graphic designer as well. So I don't know. I don't want to say anything about anyone, but some people they take advantage a little bit. Sometimes it's just have fun, or sometimes people make money. In this world, people do whatever. But I think this is for the UFO in the mountains. Amazing, this huge UFO in the mountains.
Yeah. Well, when something like this, it gets 175,000 views. Someone's making some money from it. And that's unfortunately we're going to see more and more of this happen. And so let me just ask you this: being a graphic designer, do you think that we're in big trouble, and someday that we may not be able to tell real from CGI?
Absolutely, Mike. I have to say, nowadays they do so many nice things, and you don't need even to be a super expert in the program to do something nice. If you follow some tutorials on YouTube with Cinema 4D or After Effects, you can do amazing things. And even with Photoshop, it is easy to deceive people. And I think it's unfair, Marty, because as I was telling you before, like I always loved the subject, but it's always, and before when I was a kid, I used to get really upset with people that were skeptical. I was like, you don't believe. I used to get arguments, and I used to believe about everything that you see in the news. and when I start to listen to your podcast or Ryan Sprague podcast or Alejandro Rojas podcast, I love as well. And you see how serious you guys are about the subject. And I think it's unfair when people just posting things just to get like this money and stuff, in order to get views and to get money. And you guys do a really nice work and research and talk to people. It's really cool. And then I think it's a bit unfair when people just put this just to get money. And then I think there's a place for everyone. You could just do your job. You could show your abilities another way. So I love UFO, and I love this old comic book. So I prefer to do my things in this way. And then I think somebody, for example, like Jeremy was talk about Corbell talk about the movie Amazing. Like, so someone is putting time and money and effort to research something for us, as you guys do. Every week you got nice information about UFOs, about the phenomena for new guys. So I think people should maybe show their abilities in a different way.
Well, there's there somewhere on YouTube there's a really, really good CGI video of a UFO, and the guy says it right up front. He's saying, this is a CGI, look at what I built, basically. And it's wonderful. It's kind of a Close Encounters of the Third Kind type of UFO, going over his vehicle and stuff like that. But he was right up front, and I think that's a whole different story with someone saying, this is my ability, and not trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes. And one of them is, I think one of the videos that was the most viewed UFO video of them all is CGI, and that's in Haiti, I believe, or someplace like that, and it's going over a palm tree, and that of course has been debunked. Millions and millions, and I brought this up on the show a number of times, and you listened to the show, you've heard me say it, is that there are a few people out there making quite a bit of money, because no matter how many people are looking all the time, there's not going to be like one YouTube channel where everyone's going to funnel all their UFO videos to, or they're not going to be able to get their hands on so many videos. And it may start out innocently, like perhaps a channel may have started where they actually had a UFO sighting, a real good one, and saw, wow, look at all the views this is getting, and then get frustrated because they don't get any more real good UFO videos, so they decide to make them. And so there are there's about 5 channels that I know of that are doing this, and some of them have 200,000 or 300,000 subscribers or even higher, and they're making several $1,000s per week, basically. There's nothing we can do to stop that, but it will discourage someone. I've said this before, and I don't need to repeat myself over and over, but someone that's just getting into the UFO topic now because perhaps awareness was raised because of the December 16th article in the New York Times, and all of a sudden they're getting into it. Now they're going to see the muddy waters of the internet, and it's just the way it is.
It's a bit sad as well, isn't it? It's funny, Martin, because at work every week we go somewhere. It's like Agenturwochenende, we call it. It's like a weekend that you go with all agents to somewhere. And one day we did we went for this castle, when we did at work a video with the UFOs close to our work, and it was amazing to do. I love it. It was so nice, UFOs close to work, But you have to know that it's just for fun. So it's nice and fair enough when people say look, doing this video just to show you guys what I learned or show my abilities and everything, because actually it's very confusing for someone that goes to the internet that is just get to know the subject now, and it's so overwhelming because there's so many videos and so many fake ones. And I remember you said some weeks ago on my program that sometimes when you see something, it's difficult for you to take the camera and actually get the image and everything. And then if the video is too beautiful, you need to suspect sometimes, isn't it? I found one here in Austria, was in Styria, I think. There was 2 UFOs, was in the sky, and they were they meet each other, which is really cool. And then at the same day, or the same date, they show another video on the YouTube in Vienna, and seeing as well 2 different orbs. And then, don't know if it's true, but it's really cool videos that sometimes like you make, well, can be. And even like there's some cases that happen in here now, so that they even send to MUFON and ask if what they think and everything. Was a case of this guy that he saw, he was coming back from work. I think he used to live in the woods, something like this, in the countryside of Austria, and he saw like three objects, and they're doing like they're flying in a circle, and then they stop, and then went up and down, and then the guy, I think, he filmed for 5 minutes or 40 seconds, and then afterwards his memory of his mobile finished, and then he kept seeing the lights for more 5 minutes or something like this. So when they sent to MUFON, and then there's many cases. There's a place here, Martin showed, Knittenfeld, or I think it's like this, in Styria as well, close to Graz. They say there's the hot spot for UFOs in Austria. So they show, and there's a really nice case from 2016, I think. There's like 2 lights. One of them like a triangle form, with like one is this red and with like blue dots. Another one is like orange and yellowish, I would say. And they went to this mountain, and one of them, they like is in the middle of the night. One of them like kind of land in the mountain. Another one goes up and down, and after they vanish. So there's some nice cases, like if they could prove it's true. Of course, it's difficult to know that, but then you can maybe it's true. Maybe you can even still believe in.
Now, when you were saying that, is this actually in the Alps that you were, that these, and the reason I'm bringing this up, because there seems to be, I don't know if there's ever been anyone putting joining the dots, but there seems to be a lot of activity around mountains, Mount Shasta, Brown Mountain, and there's the place, the Norwegian research places in the mountains where their lights are seen all the time, and you wonder if there's any type of natural phenomena that would might bring on some type of light activity. I mean, that's just speculation.
So funny you saying that, Martin, because in Brazil one of the folklore is like this light that go up, and then in the past people used to say like, oh, this is something that happened, it's like a folklore, but I don't know, maybe there's something that happened. This case that I told you happened in Sekauer Zinken, which is like 2,397 meters. It's like 7,870 feet. So the case happened on 26th of August 2016 between 10 past 9, 9:30, and the site was seen by this couple called Waltraud Kaliber and Jürgen Tripp, and they could see this object for about 20 minutes flying on the top of the mountain, the Sekauer Zinken, and they said one of object apparently landed on the mountain. So the Alps, I don't know, because this is a very, very tall mountain, but in the Alps I never heard anything apart from this fake one in the YouTube. In the YouTube I haven't heard anything about the Alps, but I suppose they have things as well.
Yeah. A lot of times I encourage people to call in and ask our guests a question. If anyone does have a question on YouTube now, you can see the number I just posted in chat. It's 603-967-4030. You can ask the guests a question, or I'm going to actually invite people to actually talk about their own sightings if you'd like to. So if anyone wants to call in, a lot of times people will have a burning desire to talk about the sighting they had. I believe I saw someone post something earlier in chat about a sighting they had. So anyone can call in and either ask us a question or talk about a sighting that you had. So I had one sighting I've told a number of times. I'm not going to bore people and tell it again. It wasn't a very exciting sighting, but the fact of the matter is it's something that kind of led me down the path of what I do now, basically, because I couldn't explain what it was. And have you ever had any sighting on your own?
Martin, I love your sighting, by the way. It's really cool. In the bathtub? Hot tub, yeah. Hot tub, yeah. Yeah. So, Martin, I had one before, and it was amazing, Martin, because for some reason, I explain why. It was I used to play in a rock band for 10 years. And I used to, when I was in Brazil, so I used to live in a place called São José dos Campos, which is like 1 hour from São Paulo city. And in 97, we were coming back from one of these gigs that we play in another city. Went close to went direction to my parents' place, and was like a kind of a rural area. It was very, very dark. It was like about, I think it was Sunday, 1997. I think it was August or September. I can't remember the month. But like it was Sunday and it was very quiet. The lights, like although it had some lights close to the streets, but like was this way, long way. And then I was in the car in the front of seat, and the guy was driving. The guy used to play with me, and a band total skeptical, didn't care about UFO, used to laugh about my ideas, my stories. He didn't care, didn't believe at all. Really nice guy, but didn't believe. And in the back seat was his cousin, and we were approaching my parents' place. We did the last curve. When we did the last curve, Martin, we saw from 10 meters. I saw this light. It was about 2 meters of diameter. It was like green, no, not green, like orange and yellow, I would say. And it was like 2 meters, 3 meters from the floor. And when we did this curve, when we saw this light, we started to scream like, we couldn't believe, I got goosebumps till now. And we couldn't believe. And then the car was approaching. My friend kept driving. We passed underneath this ball, I don't know, the orb. Yeah, well, underneath. It was crazy, Martin, crazy. We passed it, and once we passed it, was like 2-3 meters from the car. So we passed it. Once we passed, we look back, and when we passed, the stuff didn't move. When you look back, when you went like more 5-10 meters, I was looking back the car. This light went up, maybe 10-15 meters, very fast. And from there, I started to do like going up and down very fast, Martin, and then left and right, and disappear. I got goosebumps till now. When I got home, I told my mom, I saw this light, like this. 2 days later, my mom told me that they saw in the news that some people in the area saw the same kind of light as well. So the 3 things that amazement I love about this case, the first one is because I saw it, and I was like, something that you feel like, oh cool, I've seen that. It's something like confirmation somehow, like that you've seen something that you believe, and was amazing. And you could feel that this light was a kind of intelligence, because it was like, it was up and down. I don't know the feelings. Like, I think when you saw yours, you had the same feeling as well. The second one is like more people saw it. It was like give more credibility as well for the site. And the third one that I love is my friend that didn't believe at all before became a UFO enthusiastic afterwards. So this was really, really cool. And it's funny, Martin, because I live in a place called São José dos Campos, and this site was in 1997. So you grew out like drone and stuff. They didn't just have these things in Brazil at the time, 1997. And then in the city that I used to live, that we saw that in 1986 they had a very famous case in Brazil. That is the Noite dos OVNIs, which is like the UFO night, where they saw in Brazil over 25 UFO spots in the radar or something like this. And in this city that I live, São José, they saw the first light. And then it's really cool because now, for a few years ago, the government now opened the files, and you could hear the control towers guys talking to each other. So I've seen this amazing case, Martin. Really, really interesting. I think the Tiago Tiquet, the Brazilian researcher, when you had an interview, he talked a little bit about this case as well. One of your podcasts, like 1 year ago, something like this.
When it was the Chilean, when I had the Chilean,
I think it was the same time. Yeah.
About the same.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So in this particular case, when you actually had your sighting with the light and it went up and down and all that, did you actually pull the car over and watch it from behind, or did you keep going?
This so is sad, Marty. I would love to stop. If I could go back on time, I'll say, my wife, stop it. Then I would wait for the light. I don't know, but I don't know why you didn't stop. We didn't stop at all, I wish we could have stopped the car and then trying to make a contact or somehow, because you don't see something like this every single day. And it's funny, Marty, because I've got so many friends and they don't know that I've seen that, because people don't believe. So I told my wife, she believes me, that's fine, I'm happy with it, and my 2 friends that saw it, then yeah, but it's amazing. Why did I stop the car? But it was like something that you talk about this Russian case that you talked before, that all the radio, all the thing, all the things like stop isn't like working. With in our case, we had the radio and it was working normally and stuff, with punk rock on it, but it was working. And then yeah, was just we just passed it, and we should have stopped. Next time, Marty.
I'm going to give the if you want to call in and you're overseas, just dial the +1 here. I'm going to put it in chat right now, and let's see if we can talk about. Here it is. So another person in chat was talking about their sightings, or they've had 4 or 5 sightings. So anyone can call in. I just posted that number, and feel free to talk about sighting. We still have, how much time do we have left? It looks like we have about 10 or so minutes left. So if anyone wants to call in, you're welcome to do that. You can ask myself a question or Eduardo. And so as far as Brazil, I know we're here in Austria, but as thanks for putting that in, because someone may call in. Yeah. So as far as Brazil, since you left that country, I know you said you lived in London for a while too, and maybe we'll talk about that. But not so many sightings over there. They say the weather is prohibitive of that also. But did you look back in time at some of the famous sightings in Brazil, or do any research at all in any Brazil sightings?
So Martin, I love there's some really interesting cases in Brazil, and then I understand as well why they're not famous and stuff. Sometimes it's difficult because of the language barrier and stuff, and the research that they have, things that they have on the internet. Sometimes they don't explain anything, but there's some really nice ones. I love the one that they have in the north of Brazil. That's the Operação Prato, which was like the government was sent some like the arm to check what some strange things would happen in close to Amazonia, and it was like even people getting hurt. This is a really famous. I love the one. It's really cool. And the night of the UFOs in Brazil, which is really famous. And every now and again, there's some cases that's like Brazil is really big, and sometimes it's like in the countryside of the north of Brazil, something like this. They see things and then they talk, but because there's sometimes like they think there's a folklore or something religious, they don't go further with the studies. But there's like there's lots of things going on in Brazil, and also a lot of fake things as well as everywhere. But like yeah, every now and again, trying to talk to my friend. I got some friends in Brazil that are really into UFO and stuff, and then trying to ask them. Yeah, but there's no, as far as new cases, really big ones. There's some fake ones, but like the old ones are really good ones, old ones.
What about London? I'd mentioned a few people I've talked to from there. They say, well, the sky doesn't clear up enough to see any UFO, but that's not always the case. Besides, in England, Rendlesham Forest, when you were in London, did you actually look into anything going on there at all?
Martin, I have to be honest with you. When I was in London, I was so busy working and trying to stuff, and then at the time was a different phase in my life, so I didn't pay too much attention, to be honest. I was always looking at the sky every single night to see if I see something, but like no, I didn't see anything in London. No.
Someone posted in the chat room that Jacques Vallée's favorite case is in Prado. If I said that right, are you familiar with that one?
Which one?
Prado.
Yeah. It's the one that happened in I think it's Amazonia. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, it's the same one. I'm sorry, guys, because I don't know all the facts. I just like UFO in the subject. I'm not a researcher, but there's something. There's the Prato one. Is a really interesting. There's a really cool one, and then it's funny because one of the guys that went there to observe the phenomena, after like 20 or 30 years, he gave an interview and he told many different things. Afterwards he died. He was found dead in his apartment. I think he committed suicide. Do you know this one, Martin? Yeah. But it's really interesting. Things
very depressed.
Exactly. But it's really interesting. The Operação Prato was an amazing case in Brazil. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know if it's 69 or 70 something, but it's really cool case. And what is really, I think, is really strange, Martin, is that people got hurt. There was this light coming from outside, going through the roof, and hurting people. So what happened? Like people exactly, yeah, and it was really wow, it was 1977, 78. Yeah, was amazing case. I think would be cool if someone could bring more. I think this case, Martin, is just like is as amazing as the Ariel school. Amazing cases all that happen in Africa. Né? But so the Operação Prata, I would say that it's a really interesting case, and it would be nice if someone could bring in a movie or something like this because I think it's amazing case.
Yes. So you also, if anyone would like to post any, if someone doesn't want to call in and would like to post something in the chat room, I'll try to read those questions as well. And so someone is going into mostly that case in particular. Yeah, that one has always, that one in particular with the beams coming through and the people hurt and all that, that was really something because there's not too many cases that I know of or that people have talked about where there was actually injuries, and you know that is one of them. And so anyway, thanks for the information people are putting in chat. Someone just tuned in from Norway. If you'd like to call in, I'm going to put that number up if you'd like to talk about the sighting or something. I'm trying to read what you're saying. You can call in now still, Mathis. So as far as other things going on in Austria, have you looked into any other aspects besides just plain UFOs? Other I've always asked this question when I'm talking to someone from a different country is what is so UFOs is not really taboo, but not really that talked about here too much. How about the abduction phenomena? Is there any people claiming they're abducted here that you're aware of?
So funny, Matt, because I found one case that happened in 1951 in Salzburg, and then so was an incident with was like so in the evening of 15th of May in 1951, an unnamed soldier was making his way back home. It's a soldier that was a U.S. American soldier that was here in Austria, and then he was 20 past 11, and he had to just finish his shift acting as a driver for a colonel. After he left the car in the USA base, around 5 miles outside Salzburg, he began his journey home, take like a short way, and when he was walking, Martin, he saw this person coming in his direction, and then he thought was another soldier or something like this, and then suddenly this was a humanoid, and then he described with was very white, very pale, and the eyes was like a really big eyes, and with like insect eyes when you got these small eyes inside the eye, and then so when he was approaching, this humanoid like put something around his body, and then he clicked something with his hand, and then he couldn't move anymore, and so the humanoid transport him up, and then he went to this kind of a UFO a spaceship, I don't know, it's a spaceship I would say, and then they opened and then they went up, and he could see was like as a transparent kind of a wall. He could see through the walls, and then he saw like the moon. He could see the moon very close. That's what he reported in the newspaper, because I think it's like he said about his case in the British Columbia newspaper in December 1957. And then he saw like was this UFO he could see through, so he was in the space, and then he went up, and then he saw the moon, and he saw the earth very small, and suddenly he went close to the sun when it was getting really warm. The alien, like, or the being, I don't know how to say, put something that could like cool down the spaceship, and they went to another place. Well, his story is a bit, yeah. It's a bit like this 1950s movies, you know. But was the only case, the abduction case that they have here in Austria that is no. It's a bit like the story that afterwards, and they end up in this planet. They say that was like a fantastic planet. Well, it's a bit too much, so I don't know.
It's a wild one, yeah. I spoke with Klaus Von here a couple of times in Sweden, and about abductions. There's only been a couple of cases now. Here's the thing about that also, maybe people are thinking they're getting abducted and just not willing to talk about it. That's very much a possibility as well. So we only have a couple of minutes left here. So if anyone has a burning desire, it's now or hold your peace. You can call in at 603-967-4030. Skype name Marty Willis. Either way, you can call in, and we'll give you a couple of minutes. Anyway, I do want to just, with a couple of minutes left here, I do want to say that on the 18th of September, I'm going to be visiting Stanton Friedman up at his home, and I'm giving him a retirement show. Now, I'm not saying that he is actually retiring right now. He's retiring. We all know that. Whether it's going to be sometime this year or sometime next year, not really sure. But with all the 10 shows that I've done with him in the past, I figured that I would want to do a retirement show right. So I'm going to have him up there on video, a good quality video at his home. I'm going to have the capability for people to call in and thank him for all his years of great work. It's going to be fun, and that's basically what I want to do too, is thank him and give him a good send-off into retirement. Who knows exactly when the hard date? I'll probably ask him that question, but I want everyone that's listening here or watching this YouTube video afterward or listening to the podcast, if you could, on that day, September 18th, I want to make sure that, look at the calendar. Yes, that's September 18th, and that's going to be at 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you have the means to actually watch that show live, I would love that for all the podcast listeners and YouTube listeners, as many as can be. I'd love for those people to actually be there online and post questions in chat and also talk directly to Stan. I'll have that capability with the phone number or Skype, so anyone can call in then. I want to thank you very much.
Martin, I want to say thank you so much. I'm so happy to participate on the show. I'm a big fan of you, and as I said before, when there's something in UFO conference in US and stuff, and you say, guys, you want to get together and talk, I was like, oh, I wish I could as well have a conversation with Martin, and it's nice that it happened, and thank you so much, and thank you for the amazing and brilliant job that you guys do.
Well, thank you. And it was funny when you and I were communicating. I think it was only a year ago. I said, well, someday I want to get to Vienna, and it just happened to work out this time. And it had to do with crazy flights, actually, and just making sure that I stayed here for a few days, because it's the only way I could get through Russia this time. So next week we have James T. Abbott. I know he is involved in some type of film, and I want to say I'm sorry about that. I don't have any other information. He's going to be our guest next week, so make sure you tune in for that. And so I want to thank a few people. Also, I want to thank Peggy for managing the Facebook page. I want to thank Race over at KGRA Radio, Keith Rowland over on the Dark Matter Digital Network. This show plays on Thursday nights over there. Anyone can listen to the full show on that network. He has changed the time. I do believe it's 5 p.m. Pacific time, which would be 8 p.m. EST. So anyway, I want to thank everyone very much for hanging in with us tonight. It's been a great pleasure, and we will see you next week. And remember, everyone, to keep your eyes to the sky.